Everybody, welcome back to The Loop. Wherever you are today on the Gulf Coast, I hope you have an incredible day as we jump into the month of March. This week, I want to spend our time looking at a few different stories in Mark chapter 7. Let's jump in and look at the first of those stories today. At the beginning of Mark 7, Jesus is questioned by a bunch of legalistic, self-righteous men who are actually criticizing Jesus and his followers because they do not live according to the traditions of the elders. So let me explain that. In their day, they had God's law, and then they had the tradition of the elders, and they called these traditions the Mishnah. Now, you need to know that the Mishnah was probably created with great intentions, but over time, it got straight up ridiculous. These people were so serious about keeping God's law that they created the Mishnah and they called it the fence around God's law. So here would be a modern day example. If the speed limit is 45, these guys would create a new tradition that said you can't go over 35 miles an hour. And that way, if you slip up and you go a little too fast, you still haven't broken the law because the actual law says you can go up to 45 miles an hour. And so these people created all kinds of crazy rules to keep people from actually breaking God's law. In fact, the Mishnah was about 186 pages of extra rules. So here's a real example from the Mishnah. God's law said that you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. God wants you to have just one day a week when you can rest and where you can enjoy worship. You can work the other 6 days. So the Mishnah would try to define what is considered work and what is not considered work. Now, I want you to listen to how silly it got. This is from a New Testament scholar named R. Kent Hughes. He said this: the rabbis actually debated about a man with a wooden leg. If his home caught on fire, the question was, could he carry the wooden leg out of the house on the Sabbath? Because at some point, carrying wood becomes work. That was a real conversation for the guys who were creating the Mishnah. Now, Jesus looked at these guys and he thought they were being ridiculous. In fact, he called them hypocrites, and he said this. He said, these people who do this, they honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Now, I hate to say this, but I think we're more like these guys than we care to admit. I think a lot of us have gotten pretty good at playing the game, at looking or acting the part. And when that happens, we start to honor Jesus with our lips. We say all the right things. Listen, we may even do all the right things. But if our hearts are far from Jesus, then playing the game or acting the part doesn't really do us a lot of good. And so as we wrap it up today, I want to ask you a question about your heart. Is your heart far from Jesus, or is your heart chasing after Jesus? I'm not asking you if you're moral. I'm not asking you if your behavior is good, because I think this story teaches us that Jesus cares more about proximity than he does about performance. His ultimate goal is not for you to be right. It's to be in a relationship with him. And so I want to close today with a prayer that comes out of Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24. There the psalmist wrote this: search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting.